Hi everyone, welcome to Beyond the Evidence. This is the channel where justice matters. My name is Marv. I am a true crime fanatic, and I love to dig deeper into the mysteries of unsolved cases. Join me as we search for missing persons, uncover the clues in unsolved murders, follow along with jury trials, and we'll be a voice for the voiceless. I'll share with you the facts, the theories, the clues, the evidence, and the controversies that surround these cases. This is Beyond the Evidence. Hey everyone, give me just a minute. I am getting some ice. All right, on my way. All right. Buckle up, folks, because we've got a lot of information to go through tonight. Boy, crazy day. Another crazy day. We're finally hearing some information and testimony about Richard Allen and how he is tied to this case. Let's go over our usual good things. Let's see here. Who's our first five? Judy Holiday says, hello, everyone. Welcome. Stephanie, nice to see ya. Jackie, hello there. True Crime Talk with Gibblemeister. Love it. Oh, Melissa, how are you? And AG Freckles, good evening, Marvin chat. I look forward to learning what notes you took today. I truly hope justice will be served with Abby and Libby. I feel much better about it today, let me tell you. We got a brand new notebook. I did pick one up yesterday after court. Came home for a couple hours. Did the live, turned around, and went right back to Delphi. It was cold last night, so I slept in the car. I got at least 6 hours of sleep, so that was a good thing. Turned around and cranked back out through it today. So, we're going to start here because there's like 5 testimonies to go through, and it's huge. Some huge things happened today. Kathleen, welcome. And Andrea's here. Jackie and Teresa. I'm doing everything I can not to get sick. So, oh, you are so welcome. Teresa says, Marv, thank you so much for doing this. You're so up on this case and know so much. You're presenting everything so well. Thank you. I'm trying to do the best that I can. I'm getting you all of the information from each testimony. I had the chance to watch some Main Street Media, and boy, they're spinning things and not telling you guys everything. So I keep encouraging you all to watch the YouTubers that are in the courtroom, because we're breaking it down to you every day. So glad that you found me. And yes, JLR was nice enough to have me on his live the first morning. I'm gonna have to get in touch with him, see if he wants me to come back on and give everybody an update. So yeah. So today Day 6. Now, I do my days of the actual trial. Some people will tell you it's day 8 because they counted in jury selection and all that, but I didn't. So, yeah, I was on JLR the Monday that court started. So he was here and got to talk to him. He was very nice. I have met so many new people. And I just got to give a shout out to the YouTubers and the podcasters that are there on a daily basis for their viewers. We are all exhausted. But we're doing it so that we can bring you guys all the information that we receive. I've met Kevin and Anya for Murder Sheet. Very nice people. Love chatting with them. Tom Webster, talk to him on a daily basis. Now, who else? I'm trying to. Andrea Burkhart, Lawyer Lee, True Crime with Frank Meister, Turbo's there. So many of us, are there trying to get this information, not only so we can hear it, but so that we can make sure this goes out to everyone. So if you know anybody who's interested in this case, send them to the channel and have them watch the updates, because the things that you're getting on Main Street News, not the whole story. I can guarantee you that. All right. So I got a little bug here. The day started out at 8:53 this morning. Richard Allen walked in with a light blue shirt. Looks very nice on him. Khaki pants, belt, glasses on his head. He was standing, talking to Baldwin, glancing at the family, raising his eyebrows at wife. They're not allowed to talk, so it's got to be so hard for the two of them. So they just throw glances at each other. And he looked around at the audience more today. He was in a very good mood this morning. Not so much after lunch. Baldwin was wearing a bright red tie, and Rosie, who was usually has a very colorful tie on, today wore black. So, there was a large group of family members there for Richard Allen today. Largest I've seen yet. There was 7. They sit on the right-hand side. The left-hand side, you've got Carrie, the girls, Becky, Patty, Mike, Patty, her sisters, Tara, and then you've got Anna was there today. She was there yesterday too, and her family members. So, everybody is mentally exhausted from this. Yes, Bob sits with the family every day. Yeah, Judy, we can see you. So I had mentioned that he must have got some kind of press pass or something for every day. No, he was invited to sit with the family every day. So, court started at 9 a.m. The jury came in at 9:06. Every morning, Judge Gull greets the jury. Last night they got their phones, and they were able to talk to family and check emails and etc. And because that was done, because they got their phones, she has to reaffirm their oath with them each and every time that happens. So she did that. She asked them a series of questions. Have you heard anything? Have you watched anything? Has anybody tried to talk to you about this case? They all said no. We are good to go. So, everybody's been waiting for information on how this lead with Richard Allen happened. Well, we got first-hand account of it today. Our very first witness was a woman by the name of Cathy Shank. She lived in Florida and moved to Delphi. She was raised here. Attended the university, worked with CPS, and February 2017, she wasn't working. She called and wanted to know if they needed any assistance on the Abby and Libby death investigation. She lived in Florida at the time, saw the media coverage, and contacted Rob Ives, the former prosecutor, and stated she'd like to help. She works as a volunteer. She started out as a receptionist, doing receptionist work. So basically, when the tips came in, she was referring those tips to detectives. She had information sheets and would give that information to detectives. She said they started out at, I think she said the RNCA building. I'm not sure which building that is, so I'm going to have to find out. She said it was very small and cramped. There was 50 plus law enforcement working the case at that time. Later on, she took on more duties. She was given banker boxes with reports and tips in them. And they wanted her to arrange them, label them, and file them. She ended up filling 5 filing cabinets. She created all of the folders and everything for 5 filing cabinets. Worked at DCS. Okay. So she created the folders with the names on it, and one other person was helping her. They had to be vetted, she said. She started approximately August, she started creating this filing system. And then she took on more duties. So there were narrative summaries, and this was all on paper. So she had to enter this information into the database. So she would get the report and enter the info into the database, make sure all the sections were completed, and that leads got a number assigned to it in the database. She only works for the Abby and Libby case. She was also doing her regular reception work at this time, taking the tips forwarded by individuals or by Tony Liggett and other officers. They would give them to her, and then she would enter those into the database. The tip line would also send her emails with information. They moved to the city building, and this was considered unified command, gave them more room. Tony Liggett and other detectives would answer any questions that she had. There was less law enforcement to work on tips, she said. She said the filing cabinet still exists today, and everything that was on paper got entered into that database. So September, she scanned info from files into the database. It took her 2 years to complete this because everything was moved to the a home base from the city building. And so everything moved with her. There was over 14,000 tips processed. And she was only working 4 to 5 hours a day. So they found some boxes that had not been entered into the database. And as she was going through these boxes, she began going through them, sorting them. They were handwritten tips. Okay. Tip numbers were not given to them, so she entered them into the database, gave them tip numbers, found the lead sheets that went with it. So the way that it was explained to us, and I'll get into that here in a little bit. She said on February 16th, R.A. Whiteman self-reported at the trails, stating he was there from 1:30 to 3:30 and seen girls. She had previously read a young girl's tip that they were on the trails and saw a man. So she seemed like that she remembered, along with this self lead from Richard Allen, correlated. So she pulled the file that she had created and that came in February of 2017. She didn't know how the lead got in the box. Okay. The lead that she found was created prior to her starting in March of 2017. The file labeled Richard Allen Whiteman. When she looked at the narrative summary, as she was entering it in, she realized that Richard Allen was interviewed. She gave it a tip number. So back in 2017, somebody had talked to Richard Allen, gave it a tip number, and labeled it as R.A. Whiteman. She compared it to the Richard Allen one that she had. She developed a system. A coding person cleared it. Oh, okay. Now I get it. Sorry, sometimes my notes are kind of funky. So she developed the system. She got everything entered. On this tip sheet in the box, it was coded green. Green meant that they were cleared. So, but she had the correlation of the girl's tip in her mind and realized that this man was stating that he was on the trail at that time. So she took all the information to Tony Liggett, and they changed the folder to have the correct name on it to just Richard Allen. She said because she knew the area, she knew that Whitman was the name of the road, not his last name. September 21st, 2022. She remembers that day explicitly because it was her deceased husband's birthday. This lady was amazing. So, States Exhibit 228 was a manila folder and a tab area with 2 pages found in the folder. So that was the tip. So then the defense comes on, and This is Baldwin asking the questions. And he said on the third page, and he's reading this information of Richard Allen Whitman. He's like, you had no idea if that info was accurate, did you? And she says, no, I wasn't part of the conversation, the person that talked to him, so I wouldn't know if it was accurate. And he said the name was entered wrong. She said whoever wrote the report put the name on wrong. Doesn't know who did this. And he said, well, don't details matter? And she said, well, yeah. But I'm not the one that did it, you know. Orion is the name of the database that she uses. Tips are different from the narrative reports. So that's important to know. So some of them call it a narrative report. She calls it a narrative summary. And her job was to enter into Orion all the sections in the database from the narrative summary. So he wanted to know how this was done. And she says, well, a tip is received. It's entered in the system. The tip number is given. The lead is given. The report is attached. And all of it is entered into the database. She said she saw thousands of tips, but no other tips against Richard Allen. On these reports, she saw the time, the place, the name, said that on the tip, or she called it a lead, not a tip. She kept calling it a lead because he self-reported. He himself called in to report that he had been on or at the Monon High Bridge that day. Said that he reported that there were teen girls on the trails at the same time. She can't verify the information was correct. That's not part of her job. There's different agencies involved, and that's law enforcement and any agency that helps them. That's their job, is to make sure that all the information is correct. And she's not privy to who worked the case or tips. So like I said, there was 14,000 tips or more. As the tips dwindled, that is when they found these extra boxes and they started going through them. And then the defense asked about the young man with the poofy hair. And she's like, I can't answer that. Because I don't know what kind of hair he has. And then there was an objection. Oh, wait. Okay, yeah. And then Baldwin talked about something about an outside scope and the fact that Tony Liggett was running for sheriff. And that got kind of confusing, and then they dropped it. Um, she reiterated to him that she did not start at the very beginning of this, that she began um, in September, and that there was lots of tips processed before she came to help. So basically, the defense was trying to say that they lost it. She's stating, yeah, it was, I guess, somewhat, because it was found in a box later on. Um, but she just explained the whole process. They had it down to a science, and it was working well. Um, the jurors had a question asked, how did the name appear incorrect? And she said the name on the summary was Richard Allen. And that's where she said, and knew um, Whiteman Drive was a road, not the last name. It was the road he lived on. And that she did find it in September of 2022. And somehow this box hadn't gone through earlier to get entered. And then that was the last question. Then one other person that we've been dying to hear from was next. Guess who that was? Dan Dullin. That's right. Finally heard from the conservation officer. He's been with them for 26 years. He's a captain. Talked about his training in school, criminal law, all that good stuff. He's there to enforce natural resource laws, but part of his job is to help regular law enforcement. He's worked throughout the state. February 2017, he was a lieutenant in charge of an office. And on February 16th, 2017, he became involved in the investigation under the Abby and Libby case. His job was to assist law enforcement. He was out of town at the time, came back, received a briefing, and began to work these leads. So he would get a lead sheet. It would have the name, the contact info, and how he was supposed to contact the person to follow up with them. Okay. So he said there was two different types of these lead sheets, and they were very specific. One, he was supposed to make contact with the individual, get the information that they were going to give him, write it all down, return it so that it could be entered into the system. The second way he was going to help with the investigation is he would contact the individual, he would get the information, and he would follow up by investigating that information. Okay, so that's really important. And it would state on the lead sheet what he was supposed to do. When it came time for him to work the Richard Allen lead, his job was to contact Richard Allen and just get the information he wanted to provide to police. Not follow up on it, not investigate it anymore. He was supposed to get the information, write up the details, and then turn it back in so that they can put it in the system or create a file at that time because they didn't have a system. So he made contact. Oh, and then the prosecutor gave State's Exhibit 229, which was the actual original lead sheet that showed the name, how they were supposed to contact them, the narrative summary, the lead number, and that it showed that another individual would follow up on that lead. The sections stated who received the lead and created it, person reporting it. They are supposed to inquire about it and turn it back in. So on February 16th, he made contact by phone with Richard Allen. He wanted to know if Richard Allen could come to a law enforcement facility or if he could go to Richard Allen's house to get the information. Richard Allen declined coming to the station or having him come to the house. He said, I have to go to the grocery store. Why don't we meet there? And that is where they met. He asked a couple of questions. Lead says Richard Allen Whiteman realized name was wrong. He realized the name was wrong when he met him at the grocery store. Richard Allen said that he was on the trail from 1 to 3 p.m. Now it's important you guys pay attention to these times because they change. They absolutely change. Said he was on the trail from 1 to 3 p.m. Then he changed it to 1:30 to 3:30. So on the lead sheet, it said 1 to 3. But when he talked to Dan Dullin, he said 1:30 to 3:30 p.m. Saw 3 girls at the beginning. He parked at the Farm Bureau parking lot, the old CPS building, and went to the Freedom and started out at the Freedom Bridge and he walked to the Monon High Bridge. He did not see anyone else. He was looking at, as he was walking to the bridge, he was watching a stock ticker and did not see anyone else. So Dullin wrote all of these notes on the lead sheet. There was no video or audio taken. Sounds like this was done fairly early. So Dan Dullin had not gotten into a rhythm and routine, and he doesn't believe that he actually videoed it or had an audio of it. Later on, as he got better at this, he did have videos or audio of him talking to the person who was on the lead sheet. He said he hadn't started using the recorder yet. And that he was just taking notes. So, Dan Dullin did his job, you guys. He met with Richard Allen. He took down the information. He asked for Richard Allen's phone information, meaning he got the IMPD, the EIN off the phone, and that was it. They did not ask him to get any other information. And he turned it in to the center, where, and he submitted his packet with all the info. So originally, when this originally happened with Abby and Libby, he had been out of town, and was off of work. And so on the 16th, when he got back into town, he joined in and started helping. Then they put in Exhibit 230 and 231. 230 was the Word document that he created with his notes. He said he created it within an hour of the interview on the same day and turned it in. 231 was a copy of Richard Allen's driver's license. He said the only thing he did is ran a DMV report. Now, during this time, Richard Allen is sitting at the table shaking his head during the testimony. So, like I said, Richard Allen was one of the first people who were interviewed for these leads, and there was no process at the time, so there was no audio or video of the interaction between the two. 232 exhibit is the updated lead sheet. It has all the additional information with it. So they were supposedly to take this information and, he said some of the information he had to retype on the narrative, he had to retype in, even though he made a word sheet and had everything. And he said that this accurately depicts what he wrote on that lead sheet and turned back in. September of 2022. So this is after Cathy Shank finds that there's this discrepancy. He's in the office. He received a call asking from Mullens to call him back. Because she had brought the document to law enforcement. Said there's multiple systems to look at. Searched Richard Allen, phone number, email, and he found that there was a fishing license for Richard Allen and his wife. Had his address, phone number, gave his height and weight. So he can review these licenses because he's a conservation officer. Gives them what IP address and any changes in email in his system that he's allowed to look at. 2 months after the murder, there was a change in Richard Allen's profile. And he found this out in September of 2022. So the person who purchased the license could have been somebody else, but he said that the height was changed from 5'4" to 5'6" in April of 2017, and the weight had increased. He found it odd that he grew 2 inches and gained weight. So, Then the defense comes up, said that Richard Allen was cooperating and self-reported the tip, correct? And called to speak with the office, and he said yes. And that's how he got the lead. He didn't know exactly how Richard Allen contacted law enforcement. He said he left his phone number and met him at the grocery store the same day as contacted, met him on time. He said that the attorney said, well, of course he's going to meet you. And he says, well, people don't want to meet law enforcement, but Richard Allen did meet with him. So he said he told you that there was a brief meeting on the trails at 1:30, and he was there from 1:30 to 3:30. But on the lead, he said 1 to 3. And Danielle Dullin said yes. On the lead, he said 1 to 3. But in person, he said 1:30 to 3:30. He doesn't know how long that Richard Allen was at the Monon High Bridge, because he can only go by what he was told. February 18, 2017, he told the defense that nothing struck him as unusual. That he didn't feel he was a killer just by getting the basic information from him. They never reached out. He never reached out to Richard Allen again. Then they were really giving him a hard time about this lead sheet with the wrong name. He said whoever took the lead wrote the wrong name, not him. It was someone else's mistake. And then they asked him that again, and the prosecution objected. And they said he's already asked and answered that. And then Baldwin said, well, do you think he was trying to hide his identity? Are you speculating that he was trying to hide his identity? And he said, no, it was an error. And he asked that again, and the prosecution objected. Asked and answered. Sustained. Baldwin had to move on. He said, didn't Richard Allen give you the phone and you got the serial number? And you should have followed up on this. And he said, no, my job was just to get the information. Yes, I got the serial number from the phone, but my job was to turn the information back over to Unified Command so they could follow up on it. Then Baldwin said, well, did you ask him what he was wearing or what he was driving? And he said, no, I was just there to collect the information that he was providing, get his phone information, because they were pinging everybody's phone, and turn that over to Unified Command. And they said, well, are you confident that Richard Allen was there? And he said, yes, I was 100% confident he was at the Freedom Bridge. And then he asked about the licenses. And he's like, isn't it possible for somebody else to buy a fishing license for you? And he said, yes, somebody else could purchase it. So, Dan Dullin explained that in his system that he looks at for these licenses for fishing, there is no historical data. Okay. So if he went in there in 2017, or if he were to go look in 2016, and the height and weight said one thing, and then goes in there and looks in 2017, and the information was changed, all he would see is the changed information. Then Baldwin started to ask something about had the tasks, and the state shut him down, told him that objected and said it was out of the scope for the crime scene because he was going to talk about the crime scene. And she sustained that, so there was no answer to that. Then he started talking to Dan Dullin about the sticks and the branches and the tape around the area. Anyone could walk in there. That didn't go very far. The prosecutor shut that down pretty darn quick too. Then he said that he asked Dan Dullin about a deer stand, and that he did notice a deer stand, and that then he asked about bullets, what kind of bullets would be found out there because it's a hunting area, and he said mostly shotgun shells found out there. And then he said, what about a 40 caliber round? People have guns and shoot them out there, right? And there was many objections after that. Many objections. Then he was asked what kind of, if he had a Sig Sauer standard in 2017, and he said yes. Then they were talking about the fishing license. Okay, then Nick got back up and he got to ask him some questions. And this is what he asked him. Can you identify who purchased it? Yes. Their email address, they had an email address? Yes. Who purchased the fishing license? He said Richard Allen purchased the license. He had a credit card with his name on it that was used, and he bought one for both himself and his wife. Same IP address, and when they purchase a license, you have a login name and a password. And it was Richard Allen's login name and password. They didn't tell us what it was, but they did say it was his password or login name and password. And he said, and you were allowed to look at the phone. He said, yes. I looked at the phone to get the serial numbers off of it. He says, did you go into the phone and look at anything else? And he said, no, Richard was the one that was manipulating the phone to get the information that he needed. And he said, so you didn't manipulate, meaning you didn't touch the phone to get the serial numbers. And he said, no. Then there was a juror question about the new lead sheet and how his process was. If he entered it or what happened with it. And he said no, that he didn't have access to enter it. He would add his Word document to the lead sheet, and he would staple other documents to it and send it in to be scanned into the system. Now, I can say that Dan Dullin started out very strong in his testimony, but when the defense questioned him about not recording it and stuff, I think he lost his mojo a little bit and just didn't seem very confident. After that, we took a break. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back up here. I know there's lots of people in here and that we have questions. So I'm going to answer some questions on these first two testimonies. Let's see here. Yeah, DCS is Department of Child Services. Thank God this lady caught that. Exactly. I agree. And we don't know what type of people were taking these tips or leads, as they call them. These could have been regular individuals, and he could have said to her, "I'm Richard Allen on White, whatever, Drive," and she just missed the drive part and thought that he was Richard Allen Whiteman, and wrote it that way. It's just human error that happens in these situations, unfortunately. Yeah, all these detectives and agencies on the case, and the poor volunteer finds it. Exactly. She pays attention to detail, that's for sure. Love all you do, Marv. I think what everybody's waiting for is his own words, top to bottom, that he says what happened and why. Yes, I agree with you. And you could tell that we're moving into that direction and fairly quickly. Yeah, these confessions that are recorded are supposedly top to bottom everything that we're on. Yep. Um yes, I heard that about Riley and um Betsy Blair's testimony, which we still have to go over. We'll catch up this weekend, but she did say that it did look like he was waiting for someone. I think that would be a great person to get the reward money see through. I really do. Let's see. Wait until you hear what Richard Allen's. Oh, yes, wait till you hear. There was a few things today that you're going to just be like, he said, what? Yeah, absolutely. Let's see here. Yeah, I don't think that Richard Allen is going to testify or anything. What we're going to hear from him is what he told others and through his confessions. That answer is coming up, Squeaky Wheel. I wouldn't count on it, Melissa. Hang on 1 second, guys. Okay, I got a chill, so I'm putting on my bathrobe just so I can warm up a little bit. Let's see. There are cameras in the courtroom. I can verify it. There's one exactly in the front that points toward the jury, and there's two in the back on the side with plastic black bags over them. They can definitely call Richard to the stand if he chooses to testify. If he chooses not to testify, then nobody can call him to the stand. Let's see. No audio from the interview with Dan Dullin to RA. He said this was one of the first leads he went out on. And at that time, he didn't have a process down and that he did not record it at all. You would hope so. You had heard about the stock ticker? Yep, that's what he said he was doing as he was walking to the bridge. We thought that was very weird too. He did not want to go to the police station and talk to Dan Dullin, and he did not want them at his house. But he would meet him at the grocery store. I don't know. I think they were so overloaded at that time, Farmer, that and we all know this from experience, whatever we're doing, whatever our job takes us, all of a sudden you get swamped, right? And you're talking to so many people and looking at so many things, you forget things, you forget who you talk to. You got to realize that in those beginning days they were getting swamped with tips, just swamped. And I think that it just didn't click in his mind. He's a conservation officer. Yes, he's there to assist law enforcement if they need it, but I don't think I don't think it clicked with him. And I'm not trying to make excuses for him. I truly think that's what it was. Yes, he is a truly trained officer, but we all know that when you don't use those skills every day, you lose them. And he was trying to jump in and help and get back into the swing of things. So, I don't know. Can't stay. Great show. Thank you, Paradise City. We don't know who it was. All we know is that whoever took the initial call or from Richard Allen wrote his name down as Richard Allen Whiteman. And you're right. It could have been the way that he said it. I'm Richard Allen. I live on Whiteman Drive, and he or she didn't catch the drive part, and they thought it was Richard Allen Whiteman, or maybe I don't know. I don't see why he would say that, but who knows? Yeah, there was a few moments like that today. Um, well, and you guys got to remember, they've never had a murder like this. Years ago in the Delphi area, there was a double homicide. In fact, it was Becky Patty's grandparents. They have um drugs and stops for reasons for vehicles. They don't have murders like this there. A game warden where you're from, yep, that is another name for it. They don't normally do murder investigations. He was just helping out, and he was doing what they told him to, which is go obtain this information and bring it back to us. For some reason, let's see. "5 years later, RA must have been surprised when he got the call to speak." Yeah, I'm sure he did. I'm sure he was shitting his pants. How would he have known about the car? He wasn't actively investigating this crime, you know? Yeah, did they say something on TV 5 years later? Can you remember what you did 5 years later? Or 5 years earlier? Because I sure can't. No, yeah, Vaughn, he's actually been talking a lot more in court with his attorneys. You hear him. Farmer. This man is a conservation officer. That is his title. Natural resource officer, otherwise known as a conservation officer. Now he's head of his department. Let's see here. And he did say that he had been trained on all of that. I agree with you. Which statement? Did I miss something? Regardless of mistakes, which we know happened, I agree, it doesn't absolve Alan's guilt or the evidence or his confessions and his admitting to being on the bridge. Exactly. Let's see here. Oh, believe me, this jury is on it. These people are awake, engaged, and hanging on every word. Today, when the defense had their little debacle and could not get things right, one of the jurors openly was shaking their head at them. They're watching everything. Okay, let's see. Who are we going to next? Oh, yes, third. Steve Mullins was on the stand again. He was next. Carroll County investigator. They want to talk about September 21st, 2022. Tony Liggett received information that paperwork had been located regarding Lieutenant Dullin's lead sheet. He reached out to Dullin and forwarded and all the information was forwarded to Mullins. He reviewed it to see if anyone talked to Richard Allen. Since then, no one had. He received the DMV information. Richard Allen had a 2006 Ford 500 and a 2016 Ford Focus. The Hoosier Harvest Store video. Oh, they used the Hoosier Harvest Store video to look for the vehicle. They started at the time of 1:30 p.m. on February 13th, looking at the video because he had said he got there about 1:30. Now get this. This was huge. Huge. So, he went to CVS and located Richard Allen's car and took pictures of it. They looked at the video to see if they could find the car, and the timestamp of the car going by was 1:27 p.m. on the 13th. Baldwin came on and he said, "How can you say it matched Richard Allen's car?" And he said, "Well, in my opinion, it matched based on details of the car." He believed it was a match. It matches the description. They looked at State's Exhibit 233, shows frame by frame of vehicle. State's 242, it passed the Hoosier Harvest Store camera, and it was a close-up of the vehicle. 9 seconds. So from 127 something to 127:44, and it was going east to west. And it was located taken from the Hoosier Harvest Store camera, which is on the west side of the building. From the Hoosier Harvest Store camera, they zoomed in That's how they got 243. He approaches the map and shows the direction that Richard Allen was headed. West, time entered was 1:27:35. And he stated that the car in the video matches RA's vehicle. Now, they did say that you cannot see the license plate or the person driving. So once again, the angle of the camera did not pick up the license plate or who was driving. The shape is consistent. It has a hatchback, the tail lights, the bumper, and especially the rims on the wheels all are consistent with the car seen in the video. They were black sports rims with spokes, and you could see daylight through them, through the other side. And you could clearly see this on the video. Time arrived at CPS at 1:30 to 3:30. The video shows 1:27 p.m. He said he drove to the residence on October 13th, 2022, made contact, spoke to him with Tony Liggett. They wanted to ask questions, told him he was not under arrest, and that they would transport him to the police station or the location that they chose to ask these questions. He was not handcuffed, and Mullen said he had a 2014 Buick unmarked police car, and they took him to the location, advised him of his rights, and started asking questions. Richard Allen told them he went to his mother's, which is north of Peru. He was off that day, but his wife was working. At between 11 and 11:15, he left his mom and he went home. And the reason he went home was to pick up a jacket. He then went to the Monon High Trail. He walked past 3 girls. He was looking at a stock ticker on his way to the bridge, and that he had parked at the old building, the Farm Bureau building, otherwise known as the CPS building. He said he arrived between noon, or at noon, around noon, and left at 1:30. This is the third time now, if you've been paying attention, that his time has changed on when he went to the trail system. First, it was 1 to 3. Then it was 1:30 to 3:30. Now it's noon to 1:30. Said he walked to the high bridge and he was looking at the fish while he was standing on the first pavilion. They asked him, "Where did you see the 3 girls?" And he said, "At the beginning of the trailhead." They were walking away from the trail, meaning back towards the Freedom Bridge, and he was going on the trail. meaning away from the Freedom Bridge. They wanted to know what vehicle he drove, and he told them the 2016 Ford Focus that was black. And they asked him, which way would you have driven? And he said, either I went through the city to the trail, or I took the country roads to the trail. Mullen points out the trail where Richard Allen's house would be, how he would take the city roads to the trail or the country roads to the trail. Now, at this point, Richard Allen is shaking his head no. So they said he would have taken East Main Street to County Road N, and then made his way to 200 North to 300 North. If he came from, then the country roads was east on 200 North to 300 North. Then he would come on 300 North and pass the Hoosier Harvest store and get to the CPS building. He was said that he was only there for 1 hour. Richard Allen stated he was only there for 1 hour, and that he told his wife that he had been on the trails that day. That he was wearing a black or blue Carhartt jacket and a skull cap. That he had military type boots or shoes on. He said as far as the girls that he saw, one was older and two were younger. They asked him if he could look at his phone. He agreed. He typed in the passcode, and then he decided that he did not want them to look at his phone and denied them access. They said he got very aggravated and terminated the interview. Okay. Said he could not recall convo with Dullin in time. They showed him the BG pic and asked him, was it you? Is this you in this picture? And he said, if this picture was taken with the girl's camera, it could not be him. What kind of answer is that? Is this you, the man on the bridge? And he responds, I would have been like, no, it's not me. I was not on that bridge on that side. I told you I went to the first platform. That was it. But instead, his answer is, if the pic is taken with the girl's camera, it could not be him. So they took him home and they got a search warrant. Said that the black Ford Focus was owned in 2017, confirmed that the car was purchased in 2016 new. And then we went to lunch. And then we came back. But I have to go to the bathroom. So somebody chat up the chat while I go to the bathroom, and I will be right back. Okay, I'm back. So when we got back from lunch, Richard Allen was very agitated. He was standing by the defense table, which is right next to the prosecution table. Let me tell you, there's not much room between the two. And he was like this. And he was looking around, and his brow was furrowed. And then he was like this. And he was looking at around, and he was more serious and worried looking than I have ever seen him. Baldwin actually went and patted him on the shoulder, like, it's going to be okay. Because you could tell that he was just upset and mad and was not his usual self. The defense started off with a doozy. Basically, came out and told Mullins that he had just lied to the jury. That was Bradley's opening statement. You just lied to the jury. Now, you're not going to get a whole lot from this section because there was several objections by the state. Whatever Bradley tried to ask, he did two things. He either didn't ask it in the right format, or tried to impeach the testimony in the incorrect manner. So there was several objections, and there was several meetings at the bench with the judge. So as soon as he said, you just lied to the jury, there was an objection. and it was sustained, meaning drop it. He said Rick told October 13th that he possibly drove the country route. And Mullen looked at him and said, okay, what's the question? And he said, did you just testify that Rick Allen told you that he could have taken a country, or he did take a country route? And he said, yes. And he says, okay, here's the transcript. Where did he say he may have gone north 300 to west? I'll give you a few minutes to look at the transcripts. You tell me when you're ready. And you find it. And this was agonizing because it took several minutes. I don't know why I'm calling him Bradley. Baldwin was looking smug at this point. Several minutes go by with Mullen still looking through these transcripts, and he finally says, page 44, and he read a part of the transcript, and Baldwin goes, well, that doesn't say that he may have taken the country roads. And he says, yeah, but I interpreted it that way. And then Baldwin says, you were trying to find out if it was Richard Allen's vehicle. And he said, correct. And then he went to pages 34, 35, and 36 of the transcripts and had Mullen read them quietly to himself. And it says, and then he said, well, which way did he go? And the state objected. And they met at the judge's bench. And then Baldwin came back and said, Mr. Allen told you he took the loop. 300 north was one possibility. And he said, page 35, lines 15 to 18, interviewed Richard Allen, and he reads it to himself, lines 15 through 18. And Nick must have seen where the defense was going with this, because he objected to it, and it was sustained, meaning witness didn't have to answer it. And he said, and then Baldwin said, you kept asking him, was there any other way you may have drove through town? And he said, yes. He told me he may have went through town. And he said, and then you kept asking him, did you take another way? And on page 36. And he said, yes, I did ask him that. And he said, the reason you asked is because you're implying facts under questions. Oh, no. This is where he asked another question, but Baldwin was using his own facts to ask the question. And Nick objected. And the reason for the objection was that Baldwin was asking and impeding facts under the question that are not true. And the judge sustained it. They have to ask their questions in a certain way. You can't just nilly-willy throw out information that you think might be right to ask your question. So that is why the judge sustained it, and Mullen didn't have to answer. Well, at this point, Richard Allen was getting really, really pissed off. You could tell by the look on his face and him sitting there. Baldwin attempted a second time to rephrase the question. And Nick objected and said, asked and answered whether he drove west. And Mullins answered yes. And then he said on page 37, line 8, he said he would go through town. We would go through town, and he was reading from the transcript. So the defense was trying to impeach the witness, and it was not going well, regarding what way Richard Allen took to the trail. And Baldwin said, well, and then he dropped that subject. And he said, well, your theory is that Richard Allen would have to be there between 1:30 and 4, and his car has to be at that CPS spot. Because the defense is going along with the fact that they're saying Richard Allen left the trails by 1:30. And he asked him, is there anything that contradicts that Richard Allen's car was there? And the answer was, not that I am aware of. And then Baldwin brings up the Comet car from Betsy Blair's testimony. Immediate objection. Not put into evidence. And then says, Judge, may we approach? Well, they had a long conversation at the bench and came back. Then he wanted to talk about lost evidence. And the prosecution objected outside the scope of direct, which means when the prosecution is asking questions of a witness first, or the defense, doesn't matter either side. The opposite side can only ask questions related to what the first side brought up. And since the prosecution did not talk about any lost evidence, it was outside the scope of what had been talked about in the direct examination of the witness. That was sustained. Baldwin then sits down, and we're like, what's going on? And he said he was done. No more questions. He gave up. Instead of trying to rephrase his questions the proper way and to impeach the testimony of Mullins the proper way, he just gave up and said no further questions. There were so many objections in this part. It was nuts. So then the jurors got to put in some questions. Were you in an interview when he stated he didn't remember which way? The answer was yes. And then they asked, was this videotaped? Was the interview videotaped and would show this? And he said yes. Were there any other black Ford Focuses in the area at that time? The answer was no. Was there any other car on the Hoosier Harvest Store video? Yes. And then he said, no, not on the video. Was there any other vehicles matching a Ford Focus on the Hoosier Harvester video? And the answer was no. So then Sheriff Tony Liggett gets on the stand. He says he's currently the Carroll County Sheriff. He's been a law enforcement officer for 23 years. He tells them about their training. He said in 2017, he had the role of a detective. And he was part of the investigation of Abby and Libby from the beginning. In September 2022, he testified that Shank brought a tip lead from Dan Dullin to him to review. She showed him the tip lead and shows tip lead. Why did it strike? Oh, and then he asked him, why did the tip lead stick out to you? And he said that they were not aware anyone had seen girls on the trail. They knew there was girls on the trail, but nobody had ever come up to them and said that they saw the four girls on the trail, and that they believed the people that saw the three girls, which we know now is four, but they keep saying three because they're not counting the youngest one, because she was way too young. They believed that the person that saw these girls was BG. They asked him if he was familiar with the evidence. He said yes. What info did you have about the girls on the trails? What time and past the guy, along with the pics. So what they're talking about is they knew that the girls took pictures at around the Freedom Bridge area. And they knew that the girls passed a guy. So all this time they're thinking that this is BG. So they put into evidence Exhibit 211, which is a picture the girls took. And it had a timestamp on it. 1:26 p.m. was the time shortly after that they passed Bridge Guy by a bench by the Freedom Bridge. And then they said they were familiar. They asked if he was familiar with the Betsy Blair interview, and he said yes. State's Exhibit 212 shows Betsy Blair's Fitbit information that she was on the trail. She arrives at 1:46. She leaves at 2:14. Her testimony is that she sees him on the first platform on the High Bridge. Then they said, are you familiar with Sarah Carbraugh? They said yes. 3:56, she's on the Hoosier Harvest Store, driving away from Delphi while a male is walking towards Delphi. Then they want to talk about the bullet evidence. He said it's a .40 caliber Winchester. Then they talked about Libby's cell phone found under Abby. We actually got to see the video today that Libby took. Now, it was an enhanced video. Okay? So what we saw was this. You see the phone and it's pointed downwards. You could see the boards of the floor on the bridge. Okay? The phone comes up and it turns to the side. And there in the picture, you can see Abby on the bridge, and you can just barely see someone behind her. The phone moves a little bit, pointing down, and comes back up, and there's the clear shot of bridge guy behind Abby. It was the weirdest thing to see. So they used a stabilizer to enhance the video. It pauses it and zooms in on BG and then pulls back. 246 states evidence is the BG video. The girls talk. Then the guy talks down the hill. And he said the only way that you could hear it the best was with headphones on. And this is what he heard. He said, Abby says, "Is he right here? Don't leave me up here alone." Libby comes on and says, "This is the path. That be a gun." And then says, "No path. We have to go down this way." And then you hear the voice, "Guys." Then you hear, "Hi." You hear the sound of a gun racking. And then you hear, "Down the hill." This is what Liggett testified to hearing through the headphones on that video. In September 2022, they had all of this information. So he says, Tony Liggett says he called in September of 2022 when all this information was given to him by Cathy Shank. He called Steve Mullins and they started researching and trying to locate information on Richard Allen. They looked at his 2016 Ford Focus and his 2006 Ford 500 because they could see that these were registered to him. He said they went to CVS and took pictures of the vehicle. The vehicle was backed in to this parking spot. This caught their eye because the vehicle that they were told about was also backed in at this old CPS building. They started investigating Richard Allen and saw that he had a lifetime handgun permit. They started comparing the pics of the car at CVS to the pics on the Hoosier Harvest Store video. Brandon, you just need to give it up. This is where he says it matched the vehicle description. The car found at CVS matched the vehicle description they saw on the Hoosier Harvest Store video. The outline of the car was correct. The lights, because it has unique lights on the front and the back, that matched. And especially the way that the light shone through the wheels. They went to Richard Allen's house and interviewed him. He admitted he was on the trails, changed his time to 12 to 1:30 p.m., that he left his mom's house to go get a jacket, and that it was blue or black Carhartt jacket, had a skull cap, and that he did not park at the Mears entrance. He parked at the old CPS building and then walked towards the Monon High Bridge, where he saw the three girls. He passed the girls leaving Monon High Bridge, saw nobody else, said normally when he's going out of town away from his house, he drives the Ford Focus, and that once again he was on the first platform looking at fish. He also told them that he was in the garage when he heard someone in the yard, and that he took his gun to confront him, but it was a law enforcement official. Then we got into the search warrant. The Sig Sauer 40 caliber. Same caliber as the crime scene that was found between the bodies of Abby and Libby. The master bedroom, they found a 40 caliber bullet in a keepsake box on the dresser. One round, same brand, 40 caliber, but it was a laser 40 caliber found. It was not a Winchester. They found clothing, the blue Carhartt jacket, in the main entry closet, and sent it to the lab. The gun was found on the nightstand by the bed. They said the clothing on the floor was male clothing, and it was from CVS. It was like a CVS apparel, so that they knew that that was Richard Allen's side of the bed. ATF did a trace, gave them the owner info, the purchase date, the registration, and they found out that this was Richard Allen's gun, and that he was the only owner of the gun. Nobody owned it before him. Then Rozzy gets up. And I have to say, this was much better than Baldwin's, because Tony Liggett and Rozzy actually went back and forth for a while, and then the objections started again. Rozzy says, okay, so at the time that this interview, you were a detective. You stated you were a detective, but you were chief of the department. And you were part of the unified command. And he said, yes. He said, isn't it true that you made the arrest on Richard Allen to make yourself look better and benefit from it to win the sheriff's position? Well, that was objected to, and Judge Gull actually overruled it and let him answer it. He said he made $50,000 and that it had no impact on the election. Then he wanted to talk about the search parties on the High Bridge. And he said, didn't this involve lay people, law enforcers? Officers? And he said, yeah, community members, if that's what you mean by lay people, came out to help in the search. And he said after 5 p.m. the searches started, right? And he said, yes. And he said, a lot of other people were there, correct? And he said, yes. And he said, teams searched on the south side, correct? He said, yes. Then he went on to midnight. He said, Carl Abbott lived on 300 North. Oh my God, I can't read that. And he said, isn't it true that searchers were searching east in Carl Abbott's field behind his house? And he said he didn't know the answer to that question. Then they wanted to talk about crime scene integrity, breaches. He said, haven't there been many breaches from law enforcement? And Tony Liggett said no. And then he's like, early in 2017, and Liggett said nothing comes to mind. He said there were leaks. And then he asked him if law enforcement ever issued a gag order. And Tony Liggett said, no, we did not issue a gag order on law enforcement. Then he said, isn't it true the sticks that were on the body, you stated they were to conceal the body so that nobody could see the girls? And he said, yes. And then he said, once again, the sticks were used to conceal, and there was objection. And Nick said, asked and answered, and the judge sustained it. Then he went to Betsy Blair. And he said, Betsy Blair said she saw a man. Bree said she saw a man. Riley said she saw a man. And they're like, okay, what's the question? And then he never really got to it, I don't think. Because then they started talking about October of 2022 and seeking the search warrant for Richard Allen. And he was talking about the facts that they gave to get the search warrant, and that they had focused on the timeline, and that they had focused about the facts about the witnesses and what they saw. What witness, Bree Williams, never offered up info of the man being tall. And he said, no, she did not. And then he said, okay, on the PC affidavit, page 3, and all of a sudden Nick stood up and said, can we approach? So they went to the bench. And whatever he objected to was sustained. So then they talked about the Hoosier Hard Store video, the camera facing 300 North. And then he said, this is where Sarah Carbaugh, the muddy and bloody witness, saw the man coming out between the cemetery and the Mears entrance. That is information we have never received before. So all this time, people have been wondering, where did he come out at? And now we're hearing that he came out between the cemetery and the Mears lot. And then they said, well, the Hoosier Harvest Store is about 100 yards from front to back, is it not? And he said, yeah, about that. And then he said, well, shouldn't we have been able to see the man on the Hoosier Harvest Store video? Because there's no individual that walked by on that video, is there? And he answered no. And he said, well, then that leaves us with three things that could have happened. He rerouted to south to go back into the woods to make it around. He went southwest 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 in the woods to go around the Mears entrance, or he went north to the field. And Tony Liggett testified that at the time, nobody was living at the Mears house. They were actively farming it, but nobody actually lived in the house. And he said, so there was no people living at the Mears at that time. And he said, yes. And he said, well, wouldn't you think somebody would have seen him? And he's like, well, no, because those woods are thick. That's thick growth. And then he started asking about searching. Did you search Road 300 to the Monon High Bridge for clothing? And he said, no, that area was not searched. Did you search by the cornfields of the Hoosier Harvest Store property? And he said, no, we did not search that area. He said he was not aware if anyone looked around Mears or the Hoosier Harvest Store area or the lot by CPS. Then Rozzy was talking about something about railroad tracks by the Anderson family. And Liggett said he was not aware if that was searched. I'm not sure what area they're talking about. I have to find out. And they said, is it possible that he rerouted back towards the crime scene? And his response was, no one saw anyone. Then they got on the Sarah Carbaugh again. And Rozzy said, well, you know, Sarah Carbaugh has inconsistent statements. She used muddy in the first interview and muddy and bloody. And Tony Liggett said, no, that was wrong. That she said muddy and bloody all three interviews. And then Rozzy said, is it possible that Sarah Carbaugh actually didn't see anyone? And Liggett said no. That she had waited 3 weeks. Why did she wait she waited 3 weeks to contact you? And he said, I have no here, but I think he said yes. And then there was some question about panicking And he said he never said panicking. 2 girls were killed. Oh, because he said, wasn't Sarah Carbo panicking? And he said, no. He said there was 2 girls killed, and he could understand if someone did panic at that time. Then they went back to the Ford Focus. And Rozzy said, aren't there lots of Ford Focuses? And he said, well, there was only one there at 1:27 p.m. on the 13th. And then he said, well, how many of these Ford Focuses in the area have these types of rims? And he said Ford mass produced these types of cars, so he doesn't know. And then he said, early, there's a lot of personnel used. Is that correct? The answer was yes. There was a lot of general disorganization. Answer was yes. FBI was no help. There was contention. Was there contention between the local law enforcement and FBI? Objection by the prosecutor, and that was sustained. And he told him the FBI was involved in 2019 and was still working on certain things. All right. And then he said, but isn't it a fact that Richard Allen was not a suspect from 2017 to 2022? And the answer was yes. And he said, didn't the Orient tip sheet say that Richard Allen was clear? And Liggett said yes, but that had been in error. The dispatcher put cleared, but she shouldn't have. Or they shouldn't have. And then Rosie said, are you aware of all the social media coverage? And he said yes. And he says, do you know if any of the witnesses watched this coverage? And Liggett says, I don't know. And then there was a question about physical evidence from 5 years ago. And the answer was didn't know the condition. He was not an expert in this area. And then he specifically asked Tony Liggett, do you believe the killer acted alone? His answer, yes. Has it always been this way? Have you always thought this way? Yes. And then he said, isn't it true that you thought that there was multiple people involved? And he said, yes. Prior to Richard Allen being the suspect, he was open to anything and did believe it was a possibility. Then they wanted to talk about the Bridge Guy video. And he wanted to talk about the fact that you couldn't see his mouth moving. And that sounds could have been coming from others who were alongside of them. Someone standing next to the girls. And Liggett said, I don't believe that in this case. Then they talked about collecting samples. Did you collect foliage? He said, I wouldn't think about that. He says, is there any DNA? He said, no. Is there any digital information used to solve the crimes to link Richard Allen? And he said, no digital evidence connected Richard Allen. On the phone, was there any information that connected him to the trail? And he said no evidence of this. Then he was talking about the clothes that were missing, and he said, wasn't there clothes missing? And he said, yes. And he said, in fact, there was a sock and underwear that were missing. Was it ever found? No. There was a bullet recovered, and there was a picture from the lab. And he said, okay, I got to say this the right way. He said, now this is Rozzy asking the question. He says, isn't it true Richard Allen wouldn't be in jail without the bullet? And Liggett said no, because there was other evidence. The witnesses. Betsy Blair, Sarah Carbaugh, the girls. The description. And then he says, well, the descriptions they gave didn't fit Richard Allen. And the times didn't match up. So he was trying to attack the timeline. And then he asked about the .40 caliber. He said, was there a magazine in the gun? And he said, there was two magazines, and the manufacturing type of the bullet was the Blazer. Now, I'm bringing that up because they found different types of bullets at Richard Allen's house. One was a Winchester Blazer, and the other was a Winchester Smith or something like Smith and Winchester. And then he asked him, well, isn't your memory better closer to the time that this happened than 5 years later? And he's like, yes. And wouldn't Richard Allen's memory be better because he's at that time, because he stated he was there from 1:30 to 3:30 and kept changing the times? That was kind of funny. So we have, is this the last one? No. We have the testimonies of Vido and Jerry Holeman. I'm going to do those tomorrow. And then I am not going to court in the morning, but I have somebody taking notes for me. But I will be in court in the afternoon. So, just to make sure that I don't get sick and everything is good as gold, I am sleeping in a bed tonight, not in my car. And I'm going to sleep in a little bit and then go in the afternoon. So I like that. Bam! How far behind Abby? It was at least 11 or 12 railroad ties that he was behind her. But it was just, a lot of us didn't get to see that video because we weren't there the day it was played. So seeing this for the first time, it was eerie because, like I said, the phone tilts and it shows Abby, and you can kind of see something behind her, but not really. And the phone moves again, and then all of a sudden, there he is. And it's just that creepy feeling of what were they thinking when this happened? Um, well, the video showed it. I think at this point they knew something was wrong, something was very wrong. Um, and that's when their hell started. Yes, Tony Liggett said that you could hear the racking of the gun. And then you heard him say, "Go down the hill." Let's see here. Yeah, some people just, it's all right. I'm not certain if they could record him if he wasn't actually charged. Brandon is very annoying. This was one thing that caught my attention completely. Where he said he was wearing military boots or shoes. And what exactly is a skull cap? If somebody can send me a picture of it, I would appreciate it because I don't know what a skull cap is. All right. Yes, it would make him look different if he was wearing layers, as people have said that he was. I did put it on subscribers. That's the worst part. Let's see. Yeah, another bullet in the keepsake box. He had to wait an hour because you have to subscribe and wait 60 minutes before you can chat. But 60 minutes is the longest I could put it on. Let's see. It's okay. He distracts me too, and then I lose my place because I gotta ban him. I don't know if they're related or not. Sarah rocked on the stand yesterday. Sarah did not choke. She was phenomenal on the stand. All afternoon, Richard Allen was doing this, and he kept his head down, and he was not happy. You could just normally his face is relaxed, even though he's staring off into space at different things. It's relaxed. You could tell there was a lot of tension in his face. He was not happy. Yes, you did, Randy, and I knew that was going to come in the chat. I knew you were going to say that. I don't know if the heart. Randy would probably be able to answer that one better than I would. I don't know if the cornfield. Well, actually, yes, because there had been snow on the ground and things had melted. So this was in February. So there wouldn't have been a cornfield at that time because it's winter time. Yes, I got it. Thank you very much. Let's see here. Okay, Dan Dullin didn't put a comma after Richard Allen's name when he also wrote it down. Nope, it was not Dan Doolin's fault. He is not the one that wrote the name wrong. It was whoever took the call from Richard Allen and wrote the lead sheet. Yes, today is the first day where they really started pointing the finger at him, and I think it's just going to keep rolling. I think we're going to hear more about the search tomorrow. I think that we're going to get into the gun and how it functions when a bullet is racked. So I think all of that is coming. Let's see, today is today Thursday? Yes. So we have court tomorrow. Saturday from 9 to noon, they're having hearings and doing housekeeping. So it's no testimony. So I'm assuming Monday and Tuesday, we're really going to get into the bullet and the gun information. They did show us the gun in court today. That'll be coming in the next two testimonies that we do tomorrow. And then I think we're going to get into the confessions. And that is the part where nobody's going to want to miss it. And it's going to be hell trying to get into the morning and afternoon session of the trial. But I will do my best. And if I can't make it in one section, I will make sure that somebody takes notes. Oh, I'm sure he thought he got away with it too until they stopped and talked to him in 2022. Yes, I did. And I will tell you what he said to Holeman right now. So it's not a teaser. So October 2022, they issued the search warrant. Jerry Holeman was the supervisor. He walked through the property and the house They took photos of everything before it was searched. Richard was sitting outside. He advised them, he had talked to Richard and said that if anything was damaged, he could fill out a form and they would compensate him for it. Richard Allen asked if his wife was detained. They said no. They said, "Do you want to be taken to where your wife is?" Okay, hang on. Richard Allen asked, "Is my wife detained?" He said no. And Richard Allen said, "It doesn't matter. It's over." Then they asked him if he would like to be taken to his wife. And he said, "No. It doesn't matter. It's over." Made that statement twice to Jerry Holeman while sitting in the car. So that is big statements. He knew once that search warrant was issued that it was over. And that's why he made that statement. Vido's testimony, which we will start with tomorrow, tells a lot about the search. Where things were searched, all the knives that were found, all the phones that were found, all that good stuff. It'll talk more about the memory box and this bullet being found. So those two will go pretty quick. The only reason I'm not doing it right now, you guys, is because I'm tired and my eyes keep going in and out of focus while I'm trying to read the papers on the page and everything's starting to move on me. So it's time for me to get off of here and get ready for sleep. Let's see. Thanks for understanding, everybody. I can barely see all of your comments about get some sleep. And I will make sure that I answer all the questions tomorrow too. So remember your questions and put them in tomorrow night's chat, or put them underneath the video and I will try to answer them later. And that way everybody else can see your questions too. So thank you all for your love and support. I want each and every one of you to know that I am getting your messages of concern about not sleeping, not eating, and making sure that I stay healthy, and I'm doing everything in my power to do that. That is why I'm not going in tomorrow morning. So, but I want you to know I've seen your messages. I'm still reading messages that I'm getting, and I appreciate all the love and support that you guys are giving me. Thank you to those who have sent donations for the tent. It's going to come in handy. I'm going to be ordering that tomorrow morning, and then it should be here before Halloween. So that'll be perfect. And just stick with me, and I'll give you more updates tomorrow. I can't wait. We're getting into the good stuff, and I think it's just going to keep coming, and we're going to learn a lot more of how this is all going to end up. Yeah, and I have other people too here making sure that I'm good to go. So, thanks everyone. Like I said, much love. Love you all. Thanks for your support, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye. Guilty of crime. Love ya. Girl, we gotta talk. You're welcome. Good night. Thank you for watching Beyond the Evidence. Today, I gave you my own opinions and analysis, but I always encourage you to do your own research and form your own conclusions. If you're interested in true crime and want to join me on this journey of discovery, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss any of my uploads. If you'd like to support the channel, join our membership, and if you have any suggestions for cases that you want me to cover, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and remember, justice matters. This is Beyond the Evidence, and I'll see you in the next video.